Hello. I'm going to walk you through this DAT website that I created as an example of how instructors can share content with each other when they're creating online classes and classes that are going to be used offline. So in this Beaker website, which I created simply by going to the Create New website, that gives you a default website that you can then edit. So I created an assets folder, and then I added some content. I downloaded a YouTube video, and I had several text files as RTFs, and I captured a Wikipedia page and captured some text from a Vimeo page, which I mentioned down here. Yeah, these are the Wikipedia and the Vimeo. So what I want to show you is the view source in Beaker, and that shows the files that are on my website. So internally, Beaker has these files stored in a system-dependent location, but I've also set the settings on the website to sync the files to a local directory. So I can also add files to this local directory, and they will sync into Beaker. And I'm also using preview mode, which means that versions of the website are maintained only when I decide to publish them. See, of course, each website has multiple versions as the contents change. So what's good about this is instructors can go back to older versions of a page or any file and see what it was, and then go back to the latest published version. So basically, in the assets folder, I have all the content that I'm sharing. So the MP4 video is 150 meg. That's the largest file. But what I decided to also do was to zip it up and create a zip file for people who are browsing the website through HTTPS who don't have Beaker. And I added a link to that here for people to download the assets. So what's nice about Beaker, they have a service called hashbase.io, and that gives you HTTPS security for people to visit your site through HTTPS, and for people who have Beaker, they can visit it through DAT with whatever URL you choose. Okay. So, so Beaker makes it easy for instructors to do this, but another tool that I've explored is called Pushpin. It's by Ink and Switch, and this link shows there's a demo of what it does. It's really a cork board that people can paste cards on and links and chats, and you can read about it here. The technology that makes it possible is called auto merge, and what that means is you could have multiple users who know the address of the cork board posting cards on it, and each person posts a card with their own identity. So I'll show you an example that I created of it, but this is where you download it. And I am running it from GitHub, and I'm running it from the source directory. So I just type npm start, and it's going to launch Electron, which is a cross-platform native application environment. So it's starting up right now. Okay, so it needs Node to run first. So now it's creating a window, and it's going to ask me if I want to allow incoming connections, and I do. Okay, just give it a minute. So, okay, so we allow incoming connections. That's optional. If you're just doing it locally, you don't have to. But so what that means is I could have other machines on my network, or if they can connect to me over the internet. Right now there are issues with peers finding each other, but in the future there will be an improvement to the networking protocol. It's going to be called Hyperswarm, which uses what is called a Kademlia distributed hash table, which means that peers should be able to find each other in a much more efficient way. Okay, so it's probably a little slow right now because of their recording software, but you'll see it come up soon. Okay, so this is a home page that I created in Pushpin, and all these are our cards, and cards have different types. So if I hit Control-click, I can see the different types of cards that could be created. So most of these are text cards, like here, but I could have URL cards where I am pointing to a URL, and if it finds information about the URL, it'll create a nice little box like this. Now, we can also have images. You could just paste static images, and you could link to other boards. So that is what I am doing here. So I created other boards, and I created links to them. And now, so that gives me a way of navigating. And threads are discussion threads. So I have an example down here where people who have access to the board can chat with each other. So this is my identity right now, this little alien icon. So I wrote that message, and then other peers who have access to the board will show up here. So I created an identity called Pigeonhole, and that he asked that question, and then I replied to it. And so that's one way of collaborating. And so the goal of a system like Pushpin for education would be for instructors to collaborate with each other on preparation of materials. So this is an example of how people can collaborate using Pushpin. So in this example, I pasted a link to a YouTube video that needs to be transcribed and optionally translated to another language. So clicking the link brings up the video, and it is a recent live stream where Paul talked about the roadmap for Beaker and DAT. So I was able to save the transcript that is auto-generated from YouTube into an RTF file and paste it into Pushpin. So here is what it looks like. So I started editing it a little, and if somebody wanted to translate it, they can work in this window. So like YouTube thought it was the Dad project. El Padre Proyecto. Okay. So to edit it, you would double click in this window, and then you can then delete what you don't want, and you can change what's wrong. Okay, let's just put a return here, and then this back button brings you back to your board, and you can see the new text is in here. So people can be collaborating simultaneously on this text, and I could test that if I went to another machine and typed in the box. Okay, so I want to walk through the rest of how I'm using this for a project brainstorming board. So my idea is a project called Climb That Mountain, because learning is like climbing up a mountain, and maybe there are people higher up who've already mastered a topic who could help you, and like if you need help, they could throw you down a rope and work with you to help you get up to the next level. Okay, so it's a learning management system. There are many out there, but there's Beaker, and Beaker gives you, you're in control of your user data, what you're working on, and your homework, your notes. And with Pushpin, there could eventually be different types of cards. You can extend this list of data types using React and create components that will become new types of visual cards. Okay. So here is a URL card that shows the objectives of what a LMS what types of learning a Beaker Pushpin LMS could support. The proof of concept project would be to help people who are interested in learning about some of the internals behind the DAT protocol, how it works behind the scenes. So SLEEP is one of the protocols that is the fundamental maintenance of the file system files that represent a DAT hypercore, which is where it keeps track of the hashes of each file. And it is possible to read a paper about it, a technical paper, and walk through that. But if people have a high-level overview of it and walk through an example where you create a site in Beaker and you look at the files that are on your system, and then you could look at what the technical data structures are conceptually and optionally do a deeper dive. But that could be like an optional unit for a student who wants that. Other people can just get the high-level overview and move on. So with DAT Mountain, there are different learning paths that people can take, just like there are different paths up a mountain, depending on your goals. Okay, so now what's nice, I could go right back here. And so now, if you think of a student, each user can have their own home page. So here's a sample page that I created for myself. So I called it Eric's Pigeonhole, because sometimes I use Raspberry Pis to connect to these applications. And I can have URLs in my board, like that's a link back here. Okay, so what I want to show, like, see, because you have different user identities working on the same board, it's possible to have a guest book where cards are posted by different people. Now, if you look at this icon here, you will see the different identities and whether they are online. So Eric Rangel is the identity that owns this board, and that's what I'm logged in as right now, because I started on the machine that has this identity. But I have a Windows 10 client using this identity and the MacBook Pro using this other Pigeonhole identity. Okay, so there are many possibilities of how you could use this for student collaboration, but that's a future project. So let's look at the project scope. Okay, we'll define it later, but I don't want to limit ourselves. Yeah, so a self-directed class on DAT internals would be our first project. Now, the use cases, right now I'm just thinking of roles, what we would need to have the different roles that we would need, and then the different use cases can be outlined under here. So I would like to be able to collaborate with people on that in the future. User stories, okay, so each role could have multiple stories based on the use cases, and these are coding units that explain the reasoning behind what value that story provides. And now a Kanban board is a way of tracking progress on work. So see, the nice thing about DAT and Pushpin is you have offline access and you own your own data. So if somebody wanted to create their own Kanban board, they could take a copy of a board that's in progress, get all the cards, and make it rearrange it to make sense for them. So we're giving users a lot of control. And then brainstorming, yeah, that links to a brainstorming site. So here is where I'm just posting ideas that I think of. So let's take a look. Instructors can deliver live class materials. Yeah, so in a class, an online class, you give the URL of the board. Students can interact in their own boxes. And yeah, so they could ask questions. The instructor can reply to them. So the metaphor, climbing a mountain. So proof of concept, viewing the files. So going over the DAT command line, SLEEP protocol, and DAT protocol, that would be sufficient as a proof of concept of a class run on this system. Authentication is being worked on right now. We are going to need private connections for classes, especially once there's payment involved. But Web of Trust is the concept that we will need to use, where the security is such that only people who have been invited to the class will be able to communicate with each other. It won't let any other people in. And the encryption of class materials. So this is also going to be possible soon, where that contents can be encrypted because there's a natural public key generated. So the private key is on the machine that creates the debt. And there'll be multi-writer capabilities in the future where you could invite other people to collaborate on a debt. And so, yeah, I talked about extending pushpin content types for classroom objects. So if you wanted to create a quiz object, that would be possible. It's just a React component. And figuring out how to host pushpin files on Hashbase.io. Okay, either Hashbase.io or either a peer. So currently it's running in Electron, and the files are a bunch of hypercores in the file system in a specific, it's a machine-specific area. So right now I'm able to zip them or create a tar file of all my hypercores as a backup. But hosting the pushpin, so Hashbase.io is what's known as a super peer. That's where a server is running a virtual machine, and it's a peer where people publish their DATs, and it uses Let's Encrypt to give you HTTPS access, and it's on the network, so when you shut down your computer, other people can still get to your site. Okay. So, so it's a nice navigation that Pushpin gives you, but we are trusting each other to collaborate and respect each other. So if somebody starts deleting things or misbehaves on the board, we have to be able to recover from that. So right now I'm just taking backups. Now here are some examples of links. So this is a link that takes me right to the website that I showed you earlier. So that's a nice thing that's available. And I'll go back to Electron here. Okay, so you could have information about that. So like there are two ideas from OpenCon that I'm following. So like if I click this, I could go right to the GitHub page and see, I added a comment to it. And we can go back to Electron here. Okay, so now I have like other links. Say I want to just, if people want to explore some other links that I'm interested in, they could click that. Okay, so that actually created a new page where I could add links. I haven't done anything there yet. But my Twitter feeds. So like this one is a Twitter discussion feed where I'm bringing you to the bottom of it, but then you scroll up and you see a whole thread of when this discussion started. So Paul started it, and I replied, and Peter replied, and then we started conversing back and forth, and I kept posting ideas as I thought of them. Okay, and so it grew, and I invited people as I decided who I wanted to invite. Okay, so it is possible to have a rich experience here. And like I posted a link. This is just a link card, and it read the website, and it posted a picture, and people can click the link. So in a class, you're going to want to have links to other sites that people can just click from the pushpin. Okay, and there you have it. So this will grow over time, but you have a basic idea of the power available. Pushpin was designed based on a lot of ideas of Ted Nelson, the way he hyperlinks. He's the original coiner of the term hypertext, and his Xanadu system was the concept to have a much richer web than we have today, because Tim Berners-Lee only created jump links that take you away from where you're going. So the key is to have context as you're navigating. Okay, so feel free to contribute to any discussions. You can find me on Twitter, and thank you.